everybody, this is James Lindsay, and you are listening to New Discourses Bullets, where I give a short bullet point-like summary of a single topic relevant to woke that we need to understand so we can beat it. And I'm going to tell you a very sneaky trick the woke use pretty much all the time. It's a bread and butter technique, and it is the essence, I have been told, of an intelligence operation. Another way to put that would be that it's the essence of a political warfare strike, and of course that's why the woke do it all the time. Most of what woke is doing is political warfare, and we've talked about that a lot of times in the past. This is another one of those short episodes. So I had a naval intelligence officer, and for those of you who are kind of in the know, not that one, a different one, tell me one time, sit down and have a conversation with me one time, and he told me the essence of a intelligence operation, which is the same as saying the essence of a political warfare strike, is to hit your enemy and make him think someone else actually is the one who hit him, so that when he retaliates, he attacks the wrong target. And the woke do this all the time. I will use a simple contemporary example that we're going through right now, where the left is provoking us. It's using the principle of your target's reaction is your real action, and it's causing us on the, anti-woke or conservative side of things to make a gigantic mistake very publicly. But then I'll give you a couple more examples that are very important that I've said before, but they fall within this purview of an intelligence strike, which again, the essence of an intelligence strike, according to this Navy intelligence officer, is to hit your enemy and make him think someone else hit them so that they retaliate incorrectly, mostly by going after the wrong target. You could imagine in a warfare situation that you would say you have your country is fighting with another country, and you set up the strike against your enemy country so that they think one of their allies did it. Okay? And that's sort of the essence. So you rig it up, maybe you put the silo or whatever in your enemy's ally's territory. Maybe you arrange it so that the signature of the attack looks like it came from the ally. This is the essence of an intelligence operation or a political warfare strike if there's no actual military, actually even if there is military warfare involved. Okay, and I mean kinetic warfare. Okay, so here's an example where we're all screwing this up big time right now, or I should say that the right, construed broadly, is screwing this up. We are all seeing President Trump and others trying to make big strides against woke, whether in our universities, whether against illegal aliens, or whatever else. Okay, we all see this, and we all keep seeing these activist judges, whether it's striking down laws to protect our kids from transgender madness, whether it's preventing the deportation of even criminal elements who are illegal aliens on due process claims. And this is very frustrating. And this is why I'm telling you, this is an invitation for your target's reaction is your real action. So the problem in the judiciary is that there are leftist judges who are planted within or have been placed within who are abusing their benches. That's a big problem, and it's a problem we have to figure out how to solve, and it's a problem we have to be able to figure out how to solve within the confines of American law, and in particular the Constitution. It is a challenge for us to figure this out, and then to execute it will be a second challenge. And of course, the leftist aspects of the judiciary will stand in the way every bit of the way as much as they can. But here's what's actually happening. The leftist plants within the judiciary, activist judges for the left who were appointed by leftists, whether that's at the state level, for example, in the state of Montana, where they had a run of something like 16, everybody thinks it's super conservative, it has a very conservative government now, but it had a run of like 16 years of Democratic governors who appointed a ton of leftist judges, or whether it's in outright blue states like Colorado, or whether it's, these federal judges, or even if it's people in the Supreme Court, and even if the rulings that they're making are not activist rulings, some of them are going 7-2, for example, these aren't activist rulings. They are procedural rulings that are very frustrating. And so what happens with this frustration, which is mostly coming from a distorted picture of what's happening in the cases where it's a legitimate procedural ruling, or where it's coming from more often, which sets the tone, these planted, radical, activist, leftist judges, that works as a provocation to get the conservatives or the right, construed broadly, to say that the problem is the judiciary itself, or even the Constitution, which establishes at least the Supreme Court when that's what's involved. So rather than retaliating against specifically the leftist judges that are the problem, or figuring out a way to do the deportations within the strict confines of constitutionality to the best of your ability, and playing this back and forth with the law and with the court, and continuing to try to find ways to be more effective in that paradigm, what's happening is conservatives are crapping the bed and attacking the judiciary overall, and even the Constitution overall. And this is a catastrophe. This is how you end up with a crisis. This is also the kind of thing that the left did many years ago, attacking the Constitution and the judiciary directly, that led a lot of people to decide to vote for President Trump for the first time, myself included. And so this is a major error. But what's happening is you have leftist judges who are obstructing what the Trump administration wants to do, or what the people are trying to accomplish to get rid of woke, leftist judges who are abusing their benches. And this makes the entire judiciary get the blame. The bigger thing in which they are embedded in takes the blame. That gets attacked. And that which authorizes the judiciary is either a state constitution or the federal constitution, which also therefore comes under attack. And so what happens is the left strikes the right by obstructing what it's trying to accomplish. Then the right, rather than retaliating against the left, retaliates against the actual target that the left has, which is our functioning constitutional system and, in fact, the rule of law, because they want to exempt themselves from that. So this is a very clear example of a political warfare strike or an intelligence operation that is being affected very, very well by the left, inciting the right to overreact. Your target's reaction is your real action, being the principle, and they use these provocations that escalate in order to get that reaction. And we are falling for it a lot. So that's a paradigm example. Let me give you a few other examples that are actually going to span both woke left in particular. I'll give you several, but also on the woke right, which is the kind of human shield phenomenon. Okay, so the clearest example of this, I think, would be with all the radical debauchery and perversion and degeneracy that we've seen associated with Pride, drag queen story hours, and so on, which all comes out of the queer theory wing of woke leftism. And so we're all very familiar with these provocations. I've warned about how it can be used to provoke a reaction, both an overreaction culturally, but also a violent reaction possibly, which I think we've avoided. But we all see that the Q in particular in LGBTQ, but to a degree the T as well. So the TQ is a problem, and it's fundamentally different from the LGB. But because the left cobbled this thing together into an acronym that describes allegedly a unified coalition, LGBTQ, they have successfully lied to people so that when they do a queer provocation against society that comes from the Q or maybe even the T, so we'll say the TQ, what happens is it becomes intolerable, and the backlash comes against the LGBTQ overall, which primarily falls on the LGB. In other words, the T and the Q hide behind human shields of LGB. And this is the same kind of political warfare thing. Rather than attacking the queer theorists and the transgenderists who actually are causing the problem, the blame gets displaced onto the broad coalition that the TQs are hiding within, many of whom are not just innocents in that broader, they're not even a coalition, but many of the LGBs aren't just innocent to this kind of provocation. They actively fight against it. Many of them are actually very explicitly on our side, not just in the sense of being against woke and the TQ, but in fact being against leftism at all. In fact, being many times conservatives despite their sexuality, as though one has to have a particular politics because of their sexuality. That was another leftist lie. So you see here again the same political warfare strategy. A radical group within a broader group does a provocation to trigger a reaction that attacks the broader group rather than the radicals. Intelligence operation, political warfare strike. This is easier as we keep going. We can see an example of this exact same behavior in BLM. BLM set it up as the only truly black people. They called themselves politically black, not just racially black or authentically black. They obviously excluded people like Larry Elder and called him the white face or the black face of white supremacy for being a conservative who was running for governor in California. So you get this same thing. BLM does the provocation. Everybody doesn't like what's happening. Lots of people end up blaming black people, and they frame it out as a white versus black war. And certain elements on the right now, what I call the woke right, are crapping the bed again and adopting a white racial consciousness of white pride in order to fight what BLM triggered, which is absolutely falling for the political warfare operation that hit them. They got hit with an intelligence strike, and they weren't intelligent enough to deal with it. Same thing. We can do it again with feminism. Feminism, if you dare criticize it, you will end up with a bajillion women who are feminists showing up saying you criticized women. No, you didn't. You criticized feminism, or maybe in some cases specific feminists. Maybe you called them names. Remember when President Trump called Rosie O'Donnell a pig, which is one of the funniest things ever? And then he got called out in an interview by, we'll say, a feminist who said, President Trump, you called women pigs. And he said, no, I didn't. I called Rosie O'Donnell a pig. This is what I'm talking about. So Rosie O'Donnell gets called a pig, and now the whole blame gets deflected through this activism onto women. And now you have a men versus women dynamic that wasn't ever there. It was a President Trump didn't like Rosie O'Donnell dynamic from the beginning. But feminists do this all the time. If you criticize feminism, they say you're attacking women. If you criticize specific feminists, they say you're attacking specific women, which means you're also attacking, or likely you're willing to attack, all women. And they hide behind the human shields of women as radical activists, and they execute this intelligence operation or political warfare strike, getting people to misunderstand the problem. And again, we have on the woke right a bunch of guys crapping the bed and deciding that that means women are actually the problem. And we're going to have this kind of patriarchal reaction, whether that's men going their own way who just hate women, whether it's incels flipping out all over the place, or even closeted gay men who are mad at them, or where it's all of these kind of like trad bros who are like, let's get rid of the 19th Amendment, let's get rid of women in public life, let's put them back in the home. Total overreaction, total result of a feminist-driven political warfare strike or intelligence operation they weren't intelligent enough to deal with. Okay, so you get the idea. We could go on and on through every domain of leftism that you possibly want. But they do this on the woke right too. If you criticize the radicals on the woke right, they'll say you're attacking all conservatives. Same game. If you criticize Christian nationalist radicals, they'll say you're attacking Christians. Same game. The problem is that with that latter one, or in both of those cases, a lot of conservatives and a lot of Christians are thinking tribally rather than in terms of discernment of truth, and they fall for it. So the radicals, whether they're woke right, radical right-wing revolutionaries in their own description of themselves, who describe themselves as not conservatives, or whether they're radical Christian nationalists, maybe they want a theocracy, maybe they want something very strict about religious law, something like this, Christian Sharia of some kind or another, has fancy names in Christian theology like theonomy or being a theonomist, whatever. They make a provocation, people call it out because it is against, say, the American project. They scream, you're attacking Christians. Now they've initiated the full blast of the intelligence operation, and conservatives or Christians fall for it and say the person calling this out is attacking Christians. They go further and say Christians are on one side and people who are secular or atheists or liberals or something are on the other. Even though most of the people calling out the woke right and most of the people calling out Christian nationalism more specifically are in fact conservative Christians. Those people get wiped off the table because the essence of the intelligence operation is to strike your enemy and get your enemy to misunderstand who hit them so that they hit back wrongly. And this happens again and again and again. The motif I just actually showed, whether it's the judiciary, whether it's BLM behind black people, whether it's the TQ behind LGB, whether it's feminists behind women, whatever you want, whether it's Christian nationalists behind Christians, whether it's the radical right-wing revolutionaries of the woke right who say they're not conservative behind conservatives, and even behind nationalists, honestly. Ultra-nationalists hide behind nationalists or hyper-nationalists. There's two different words for that. But that's what fascism boils down to on one level. It's one component of fascism is hyper or ultra-nationalism. And they hide behind regular nationalists and patriots. And the essence here is that the smaller radical group buries itself within a more acceptable, bigger group. And when they get called out, they claim that what's actually being attacked is the whole bigger group. Or they deflect the energy so that it attacks the whole bigger group, and then they hide from that so that it lands on other people. This is an intelligence operation. It is a political warfare strike, and we have to be savvy to it and stop falling for it. This is how manipulators manipulate us and drive the radical movement. And then you don't find out that the people who were warning you about it, whether it's on left or right, were telling you the truth about it until it's too late because they already have power, by which point everybody can see it, but they don't have options for getting rid of it, like what we face in the judiciary. Thank you for letting me share this message with you. I will talk to you again on another episode soon.